How you set it up?
Something like that, like.
Order a special meeting of the Rutherford Board of Education for March 26, 2018. And the first order of business would be to please stand and we'll pledge allegiance to this flag.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ask the secretary to please take the roll.
Mrs. Ahmed? Dr. Olati?
Here.
Mr. Healy?
Here.
Mrs. Jones?
Present.
Mrs. Librera?
Here.
Mr. Mazzone?
Here.
Dr. Racine?
Here.
Mr. Rowland?
Here.
Mr. McLean?
Yes, here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. And thank you to the members of the public who have shown up for this evening for the special presentations. I'll start by reading that the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meeting of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Rutherford Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place posted on the bulletin board outside of the Borough Clerk's office, mailed to the Herald, South Bergenite, and Record newspapers, and filed with the Borough Clerk. Hard copies of the agenda are available in this meeting room, and the agenda has been posted electronically on the district's website at www.rutherfordschools.org. Regular meetings of the Rutherford Board of Education will be broadcast without editing during a 2-hour time segment as limited by Comcast time constraints on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. on Comcast Public Access Channel and on FiOS Channel 38. A video of the meetings may be also viewed on our website at www.rutherfordschools.org. The video link may be found by opening the Board of Education link and clicking on Public Meetings and then Videos. Any member of the public who wishes to view a DVD of the meeting may make a request in writing to the board's secretary. We have this evening 2 special presentations, the first of which will be the 2018-2019 budget presentation by our secretary and business administrator, Mr. Kelly, and then the second presentation will be discussing the facilities plan that we've been discussing for several meetings. So I would ask you to please.
Okay, as I mentioned in previous meetings, we did a presentation at the last meeting. This is very much a maintenance budget. Not a lot of initiatives in here. It's really just keeping up with what we've been doing. I'm happy to report that all the initiatives that have been brought forward over the last several years are in this budget as well. So we're continuing with on the route that we've been on. But there's nothing too exciting or sexy in this budget. From a revenue standpoint, state aid has increased, as you might have seen in the paper a week or two ago, $184,000, which is 7.4% increase. That's the biggest increase we've seen in a long time. And if you remember, at the last time I did a PowerPoint, I gave you the last 20 years worth of state aid figures, and really pretty flat from throughout the 20 years. So this was a nice surprise. Local tax levy, we're looking to increase by $1,176,000, which is about 2.9%. As you know, we are held to a 2% tax levy cap every year, but there are allowable adjustments to that 2%, which we can take advantage of if the board so chooses. This year, the only one that was available to us was the health benefits adjustment, because we are anticipating health benefits increases, premium increases, far in excess of the 2% that the state's tax levy cap would allow. Our consultants have recommended that we budget an increase of 13 to 18%. We ended up budgeting 13.75%, which is the lower end, obviously, of that range. But but that allows us to keep to a 2.9% increase in the tax levy cap, which is the same increase we had last year. Budgeting at an 18% premium increase would have resulted in a 3.2% tax levy increase. The Finance Committee was insistent that we not go at that level and that we keep to 2.9 max. For the average homeowner, with an assessed value of home value of $430,000, this will lead to a tax increase of approximately $187 per year, or $15.60 per month. Budget includes several new staff members, 2 part-time aides. Remember, the part-timers do not receive benefits, so and of course the salary is prorated for the hours they work. 2 part-time teachers, and converting 1 part-time teacher to a full-time teacher. These costs are offset by breakage from retirees that we already know are happening. There'll be breakage, meaning that they make, a retiree is making, say, $80,000, but replaced with a $50,000 person, there'll be $30,000 of breakage. So those positions are covered. The budget does fund our maintenance needs, so boilers and elevators and landscaping and everything. We have some old buildings here, but I think our guys do a great job of keeping up with them, and the budget does allow us to do that some more. In capital projects, we're looking at a couple of big ones. Yankee gutter replacement over at the Union School, specifically on the Belford side. The gutters around the entire building all need to be replaced, but we have to start somewhere, and we have to start small, so we're going to phase this in over several years, but we're looking to just do the Belford Avenue side, and that was about $175,000. Boiler replacement at the high school, an air handler over the 230 gym in the high school. Cost of those 2 projects together is a little over $200,000. We're also looking at landscaping, irrigation in the front lawn of Pierpont School. That's a budget of $23,000. We're continuing our leasing program. We lease typically our computers, the Chromebooks, and the staff computers as well. Currently, with this budget, we'll have a total lease obligation for 2018-19 of $412,000 for the year. This budget includes new leases for Chromebooks, student Chromebooks replacements. That's $12,000. That's a 4-year lease. And teacher laptops at Union and Pierpont, 4-year lease at $38,000 per year. And like I said, total lease obligation right now is $412,000, including those. Budget includes all our special education needs, tuition, rates. The number of out-of-district placements and extraordinary services have all increased significantly for next year. Just for those 3 services, we're looking at an additional $400,000 in the budget. And finally, on administrative costs, like I said, a maintenance budget, we're keeping what we need and what we've had in the past, but we do have to add a couple things. We have to add election costs for the referendum that's proposed and will be discussed later this evening. We do head into negotiations with the Rutherford Education Association, that's the teachers union, so put some money in for a negotiations consultant. And we are looking to establish an archiving process for our files. We are way behind where we need to be on that, and the budget does allow us to get moving on that. So, any questions from the board?
No. The one point I would like to make is that although it's a nice, hopefully, beginning of a trend to have an increase in our state aid and to hear that it's 7.2%, that sounds like a very nice increase, but bear in mind that our state aid is approximately 5% of our
Maybe, yeah, thereabouts.
5% of our budget. So we're talking about going from 5% to 5.3%. So the actual impact is not, it doesn't change our lives, but it, as I said, it's the right trend, at least, to be receiving larger state aid.
Yeah, the board will be asked this evening to approve submission of this budget to the county office. It is due by Thursday of this week. There will be a public hearing of the budget on April 30th for the regularly scheduled meeting. So there will be more time to consider and to make final approval on that date.
Thank you. No questions or comments? Then we'll move on.
I'll just
Yes?
make one comment.
Yes.
Although it is a maintenance budget, it does reflect a lot of hard work on the part of the administration to find efficiencies within the existing budgets so that we can continue growing the programs that we're growing. So kudos to the team for, again, working through that process very diligently.
Thank you.
We'll move on then to the second presentation. And I don't know if you want to introduce.
Who's going first? We have with us tonight our architectural firm and also our project manager. And here up first to present to the board some information about the facilities plan is Kellen Chapin from PSA. And then when Kellen's done, we'll move on to Epic. Right?
What?
We'll move.
Is it?
Yeah, we'll probably, you know where the switch is? I'm going to try to dim those lights that are immediately over the screen to make it a little easier to see. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kellen Chapin from Perrette Sumgen Architects. And we're here with our March referendum update. We're getting a lot of progress going and a lot of active processes. I just wanted to outline those briefly, and then we'll get into the content. The long-range facilities plan, the LRFP, has been submitted to the state. We have gotten back their initial comments. They had a couple of minor questions which we answered, and that process is standing ready to issue approvals shortly. It'll be in April. That allows the process to proceed with the schematic applications that are also all submitted. So with the LRFP being resolved, the schematic applications will be able to proceed according to the long-range plan. The Rutherford Planning Board review is calendared for this Wednesday. It is a daytime conference meeting with the committee, and all 6 schools will be discussed at that time. If the planning board issues a letter to the department or to the district that we can forward to the department, that will shorten the waiting period, the normal 55-day waiting period for response. And that means that the department can issue their reaction to our submittals earlier. And that saves time on the overall process. We have to remember that we have to get back to a final educational adequacy approval in time to issue the 60-day notice to the election board prior to the referendum date. The environmental due diligence review is still ongoing. It's progressing. We are close to resolution of some of the underground storage tank issues. And we also have a delineation activity in the field going on currently. A meeting is being arranged with the Rutherford Historic Preservation Committee to discuss the potential impacts of the intended additions and the related site alterations for those. And we're also going to be discussing tonight with EPIC's help the project schedule. It's a new review on that. So that's our current status. All of the facility upgrades that are part of this project, which I'm going to review quickly to refresh everyone's memory, those are all a result of the Strategic Planning Committee report that was received last spring. So that was the origin for each of these points in our plan. They do affect all 6 schools, and we'll go through those from starting with the kindergarten center and on up to the high school. So at the kindergarten center, we're correcting some long-standing issues. The last 3 classrooms will get juvenile toilets in the room. That will allow them to operate without the aide having to escort students to a borrowed toilet room. The nurse's office will get an accessible toilet. That's part of the accessibility upgrade that the building is getting. There's a playground expansion for the kindergarten, and we're putting in air conditioning for the multipurpose room. We're upgrading the roof, which is at the end of its service life, and there's an elevator addition that is part of the building accessibility changes. So,
Cal, just a minor correction. The point to make is that we're not, at this point, committed to doing these things, but these are the projects.
that's
that are
correct.
under consideration.
This is as it is proposed
Yeah.
for that building in the current configuration.
Thank you.
I could add that even with the approval by the department of these, it still leaves the board in control of the decisions on every single piece of the program.
In order to put it to vote, right? In order to determine what goes into the proposal that goes to vote in the referendum.
Yes, that's correct.
Just to clarify the process, just since we have some folks who might be watching online, just want to make sure we're clarifying the process and where we are in the process.
Right.
In that we're still looking through all the proposals, and this is the presentation on the full set of proposals.
Right.
And we will be making a decision about whether we'll be putting forward the full set of proposals or a modified set of proposals to vote
That's
in a referendum.
That is correct.
Okay, thanks.
So with all of those changes, the playground is located on the left-hand side. This would be the new expansion. The existing one is in this area down here. The addition of the elevator and elevator lobby is on this side with accessibility off of this section here. This elevator would go down to the all-purpose room level and up to the first floor and up to the second floor. You can see that that's the all-purpose room, and the nurse's toilet is in the upper left. This is the first floor classroom that would have a toilet added, and on the top floor there are 2 rooms also with toilets being added. Washington School is getting, under this program, a new playground for the pre-K. This area right here is the existing 1st to 3rd grade playground and a paved play area out here. This is the section that is scheduled for this to receive this next to the building. I'm going to move my microphone just a little because my signal is not going through Mr. Kelly to the receiver. No, you're good. I was just missing that little bit of alignment there. This is Lincoln School from the air, or from 25,000 miles up. This is the area that was intended for the pre-K kindergarten, pre-kindergarten playground. This is the existing play area for the older children. And that is the little notch in the building that was made to accept the 2 classroom extension of this wing at a future point. So that's where those are right there, filling in the rest of that. The foundations, the structure, the building systems are all prepped to receive those 2-room additions. And then the playgrounds are down here on the side of the building. That's the existing first floor plan. You'll see 2 classrooms right here, and right above those are the 2 rooms that get added on. That was pre-planned into the building design in 2005. This playground that's being added is of a type appropriate for the 3-4-year-old child level. A lot of visual stimulation activities that are meant to stimulate thinking and social behavior. This Pierpont is scheduled to receive a new gym, but it has a stage. So it's really for large group assembly and for PE. It's a dual-purpose room, and it takes the place of the significantly undersized all-purpose room that's on the school today. And when the new addition is placed in the back area of the building here, then the PE classes and uses for the old gym can move to the new gym and allow this one to be taken down so that there's room there to have a classroom wing added in that section of the site with the same frontage to the road as exists today with the gym. That gym is 41% smaller than the gyms at Lincoln and Washington where the children are coming from. They have the large gym and then they come here to the 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, and it's presently a much smaller facility. So it is sequenced, and you'll see that on the schedule when Bill goes over that. We're also taking the multipurpose room and doing some alteration down there, which I'll show you. This hatched area is the area of both the gym on the left of the L and the classroom wing, which takes the place of the existing gymnasium. You'll see that it brings it right up close to the modular building, which will be connected with a T-shaped walkway cover to connect into this. So this room, which used to be isolated by itself, is really going to become an appendix to the new classroom wing. So this group will function together, and then the rest of the classrooms in this wing and the original 1906 building take up the other part. So the sequence is that the left-hand side of the plan would be built first and occupied from the access from this stairway, and then this part would be taken care of. These are all programmed to allow you to stay in operation while these are being added on. That's a really important function, to do this safely and in a controlled way. That's the second floor, and you can see this is a substantial number of classrooms to address that class size situation which is existing in Pierpont. In the cafeteria, we would be taking away the stage because now the building has a much better sized stage in a space that can accept the entire student body. This room presently cannot take a single class grouping. It's missing the capacity to have just the 4th graders or just the 5th graders. And so the new one will be able to take the entire student body or any portion of it. And this is a serving area that's enhanced from what they have today, which would allow them to use a centralized kitchen from the, which we'll see in just a minute. And the bathrooms get altered here, and we revise the accessibility to the room to make it more efficient. Union School has an open paved play area here presently. This is the addition that was put on in 2008. And right here in that square, that's the existing gymnasium. So it's completely landlocked by the building on all sides of it. Joe, when you were talking about the Yankee gutters, this is the Belford Avenue wing. That's the one you were talking about right there. This gym at 3139 is 48% smaller than Lincoln and Washington. Sequenced just like the other one, and we're looking for purposes for that vacated space, and I'll show you a plan view of that. The blue area is the new gym addition. It's accessed from the stairwell at the side of the cafeteria space. These control doors can be closed in the evening and allow this to function for recreational use without having the entire school building open. As you can see, for the existing gymnasium to be in here, there's no way to do that in the present configuration. So right now, this is a boys' locker room, the gym itself, and the girls' locker room. When PE moves over here and vacates that, this can become a STEM lab, this can become makerspace, and this can become the visualization lab. So 3 specialized science applications in that area will enhance the middle school delivery. Right now, the occupants of these 2 rooms are camped out in the media center. The orange colored rooms are the ones with the floor issues, and the gym, by the way, has that same issue, which will be corrected by this alteration. The nurse, which is presently over here, will be able to move to a properly sized nurse's suite right there, and this will allow us a speech lab from upstairs to come down here to an improved space. So there's this kind of domino effect as you correct the inventory issues that allows for all of these secondary improvements. High school is getting a little more than 40% of the content of the intended full scope. Starts with the field renovation, goes through the Mortimer wing changes, which are multiple, and deals with the cafeteria issue, science lab capacity, and general room inventory as well. So the present field, just for orientation, over here, this is what I refer to as the service court when we're talking about this issue. This is the 100 gym. This is the Mortimer wing. And the 230 gym is over here. And the pool addition from 1980 is in that section right there. The sequencing on this school is quite complex with all of the moving parts. The presentation from the option that was initially selected is to retire this use at the pool addition and convert that space into the 50% bigger cafeteria space that's needed, taking capacity from 290 up to 460 something. This is the kitchen addition that stays clear of the field. It follows the wall line of the existing 2006 addition. And down here is a faculty lounge, which replaces the one that is presently over on this wing. The Mortimer curtain wall and window and door situation affects a lot of facades on that building. It's a relatively extensive program of replacements and upgrades. 2/3 of it is on the Mortimer street face. This is your building. It's single glazed, non-thermal break, aluminum with Nesbitt univents from original construction, and air conditioning is accommodated through a series of window air conditioners for those rooms that have it. We've studied several options for different appearances on the elevations. This one uses curtain wall and aluminum panel construction. This is another variety of that uses a different aesthetic approach with a little heavier banding on the top edge. This is one that retains some of the existing more orangish brick appearance. And these are all possible choices within the budget that's been presented. In plan, the existing cafeteria is here in this side. The existing STEM lab is this long space across the hall from it. TV studio is over here. And this is the service court side, 100 gym up on this end. I'll show you that this is a boiler room, and this is an air handler room. So there's major system obstructions to any kind of expansion in that way, which was the first option we looked at, was whether there was any way to expand this as it stood, and that was ruled as infeasible. The pool addition space in yellow is the existing interior shell space of that room, which provides the sufficient capacity for the lunchtime capacity. It has 2 serving lines on it to allow more efficient usage of it. And a very important feature is that this is the present access to the pool addition, a single corridor across the back. And this plan proposes to take a corridor up here and come up to the first floor. So now there would be an access from the first floor of the Elliott wing and an access from the lower level of the rear wing. So the kitchen literally wraps around that end and has food storage, food production, food distribution sides to it. The previous space is currently illustrated to produce 4 new science rooms, which would allow, and then there's a prep room that what was the faculty lounge becomes a science prep room. And this is right across the hall from the STEM lab. This is that connection in at the first floor of Elliott for the faculty lounge, and along here is the corridor and the steps coming up. That displaced the present athletic director's office. So this shows the proposed location for the athletic director, which is down on the windows on the lower level facing the field. It's actually juxtaposed right in between the 230 gym and the 100 gym and near the field. Upstairs, with the 4 rooms built downstairs, the lab that is presently right here, there's 1 lab here, 1 lab here, 1 in the corner, and 1 across the hall over here. 4 labs that could move down to the improved space down below and create 5 general classrooms up here. So there's 1, 2, and then 3, 4, 5 by changing the partitions. We actually don't have to change the doors. The doors exist, but by changing the wall locations, we pick up an additional general classroom. So that means really this program would produce 5 new classrooms for your inventory. It still doesn't address all unhoused students, but it does make a significant step forward. If we did not use the pool down here, we looked at approaching a place to put an addition, and the Elliott wing and the Mortimer side don't have sufficient space to do anything. Down here, this is cut off by the field to make access very difficult, and it's insufficient size. So the only option was off of Fairview, and this represents a space at the very minimum of what would be required to replace both the cafeteria and the kitchen in this area. And you'd have to have service court available. This space down here is serving a function right now, and it includes egress. There are 9 exits of the building coming out into that space that would have to all be accommodated to come around here. So this box is the very best picture that you'd have. It may be a little larger than what is shown, but we would lose this, and you can see by the outline of the soccer field that it does away with the capacity, the feasibility for having the soccer field. If this building is put here, it uses up too much of the field area. In looking at that, the first option we looked at was to see whether we could expand the present cafeteria and just add the kitchen function. And that wasn't feasible because insufficient floor area was available for that conversion. So the next thing we looked at was finding alternative existing space for the new cafeteria, and that's when the existing pool was examined as a possible candidate because it's not a curriculum element. The third option would be to build a new addition to accommodate the cafeteria and kitchen, because we wouldn't be using, in that situation, we wouldn't be using the existing space. But the damage it does to the field, the damage it does to the budget by another $2.5 million, because we're having to build space that we were renovating. And it has code impacts that cause additional issues like mandatory sprinklering of the existing lower level based on a code requirement. And the egress pattern is significantly impacted, and at least 2 classrooms, existing classrooms, would become windowless classrooms. So based on that, that was the reason why option 2, to renovate the existing pool area, was derived, because of our little list of negative impacts related to the other option that had some potential feasibility. And if we did in that much damage to the field, I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense to put turf on a field that doesn't have any regulation field size to it. So in summary, if I can get my little technology to help here. I'm close to. Okay. The kindergarten center, 2.4 million. Project cost. Washington School, 200,000. Lincoln School, 1.3. Pierpont with its big gym and classroom wing, 15.6. Middle school with its gymnasium and repurposed interior space and all the building repairs, including the front columns, by the way. I didn't mention those. They're rotting at the base and need restoration. 10.5, 10.6 on that, and 22.6, I think, on the high school. That's how we derived the present value, as you pointed out, Sally, that's the maximum envelope that we're looking at for the whole program. And at this point, I want to open up to any questions at the board's direction, or should we have the schedule discussed by EPIC and then open for questions?
I think we could go on with the presentation schedule, and then we'll have the.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, I think I'm going to bring this board up in front of the screen. If we present.
And just while that's being set up, just to discuss the order, what we'll do is, after the presentations, the board will be able to ask questions, and then after that, we'll open up the floor for public comment.
Is it? Yeah, it's on.
Hey, good evening. My name is Bill Morris. I work for EPIC Management, and we were hired as the construction manager for the project. So one of our tasks is to develop a schedule. There's many things we'll do, but we thought it would be appropriate tonight to discuss how the project would be phased and scheduled, because I think that's important for everyone to know when they're reviewing this referendum. So as Kellen had mentioned, there's 6 separate projects. We've talked about how they would be packaged relative to going out for bid, but I'll just discuss briefly how we've looked at the schedule. Now, after a referendum passes, remember, the drawings that are developed now are only schematic. They're not drawings that can be built from. They go through a process. So referendum passes, construction doesn't start right away. Just needs to go through design development, where the structure and the systems are all defined, and then it goes into construction documents that are brought to the point where it can go out for a public bid. Also attached to that time frame, and that's these bars that I show in green. It goes out for approvals. Code review has to be checked, so there's a lot of second set of eyes that go through the review of the documents before they're put out the bid. And that includes a review not only internally by the architect, but also by our firm. So referendum is scheduled in October. The time frames for design are pretty consistent from all the buildings except for Lincoln, and I'll discuss that when I get to it. So we've got approximately from the fall to the springtime of 2019 for design, and then it goes through a review process of approximately 2 months. And then we have a bid period where it goes out for a public bid and contractors apply numbers to it, and you get your low bidder. So after that process goes through, we start construction, and I'll briefly go over the high school first. As Kellen had mentioned, this first bar that I show, that's a 12-month duration for the construction of the new cafeteria, the faculty room, and there's a stair in there as well, as Kellen had mentioned. At the same time, we're doing some renovation during the summer months. Now, not everything can be done in the summer, So, but we do try and grab as much as the disruptive type of construction, try and get some of that done. But as Kellen mentioned, the Mortimer wing has a lot of work in it. You have a lot of classrooms in there, so we want to be at least disruptive for that. So there's a time frame of, we're going to grab at least 2 summers to try and get those window walls and the flooring and the HVAC done. We've left a 3rd summer just in case. When we start getting through the drawings and understanding it a little better, we'll decide whether we need that extra summer. So we got it, going back to the addition, got a 12-month duration. After the addition gets done, this is all phase construction, as Kellen had mentioned. We jump into the contractor jumps into the existing cafeteria to do the science rooms. And what I didn't mention here, I left that off as I drove up, I remembered. At the end of the disruptive work, the field will be done. Because the contractors are going to use that field for a staging area, just like they did back in 2006? 4, I can't remember. Okay, so that's the work at the high school. At Pierpont, similar, it's phase construction, going out for bid, starting in the summer of 2019, and another 12-month duration for the new gym. And once that new gym gets done, the existing gym gets demolished. You got a month duration for that, and then we construct the 11 classroom wing after. Again, phase, so it doesn't disrupt the curriculum. We also have a bar in here for renovating the existing cafeteria. The existing multi-purpose room that turns into the cafeteria. At Union School, again, same ideas, phase construction. There's some renovation work that will happen right from the get-go. There's a slab moisture situation we need to correct, and that happens in 10 classrooms. That involves, there's an abatement under the wood floor. That material gets abated. The slab gets waterproofed to try and to satisfy the moisture problem, and then there's a fill that goes in where the wood floor was, gets filled up with concrete, and then a finished floor goes on. So that'll happen in the first summer, and then the addition will take place, the gym addition. And then after the gym addition gets done, the existing gym has the same condition as those classrooms, and that will get worked on as well as a couple other classrooms at the end. Lincoln School. I talked about earlier, PSA has a tighter time frame for getting the design done. And the reason for that is there's going to be a procurement time for the materials. Remember, this is the building that gets the 2 classrooms on the 2nd floor. So typically, we have time to get steel because the foundations have to be built, the earthwork can be done. All that stuff is readily available, but steel is not. So we need some time to procure that material, get the shop drawings together, and order the steel. That's why we have this this condensed design phase. We want to do this work over the existing classrooms during while the kids are out of school. So we want to get that steel up, get as much as the heavy equipment that has to be lifted while the kids aren't there, get that done the first summer, and then the rest of the building will go during the school year. I'll move on to the kindergarten center. It gets easier. There's a small addition for an elevator and a lobby, as Kellen had mentioned earlier. That's our time frame here, and then we're going to grab in the summer months. I'm sorry, that's not in the summer months. We're going to grab some of the renovation that Kellen talked about, the toilet rooms and the ADA upgrades. And then Washington School really only gets the playground area. And you can see that there's 3 playground areas. We've considered that maybe that be separate packages just to get that out of the way. So that's where we're at as far as the schedule as proposed right now. If things change, we'll have to look at it differently, but we see it as a good start to planning this project.
Specific question. Oh,
yes.
Just specifically about that schedule, just to clarify. So you mentioned that the field at the high school would be the staging area for the construction equipment.
Yes.
So for what period of time would the field be unavailable?
While the addition's being built for the cafeteria, that
Right.
first 12 months,
For the first 12 months?
approximately 12 months.
Okay.
And then we'd have to rebuild the field, so that's probably a 2-month duration to get the drainage in under the field and then the synthetic turf down.
Okay, so I don't see the field on here.
Yeah, as I turned the corner, coming off of 17, it hit me. I forgot to put that in the schedule.
Okay.
So, sorry.
But just in terms of, then, if you could clarify then, so the big red bar, the first big red bar is the construction
Correct.
that would essentially make the field unavailable.
Correct. So then that field would be built in the summer of 2020.
So we'd be looking at if all of this went as planned here, we'd be looking at a period from about mid-19 till late 2020,
Correct.
where it would be completely unavailable.
Correct.
And there's no alternative to that?
No, that's really how we built in 2006. I'm trying to remember my years. That was the way it went. I just don't see enough real estate out here to store materials and equipment and things that are needed to build that building. And you're going to need space around it just to access it and build the walls, the exterior walls, get the roof on. We can look at alternatives, but it would be difficult, I think, and more costly not to be able to use that space.
Right. It's just that one of the pieces of feedback that we certainly heard loud and clear from the community was about that field and how heavily people rely on
losing
it. And wanting it to be upgraded. And so, well, certainly recognize that things don't magically happen overnight. To the extent that we could find alternatives to taking it out of commission completely for over a year, I think that would be, those would be options worth exploring.
Try and shorten that time frame.
Yeah.
We could look at that.
I have a question about this preliminary plan. Just looking at it, the long poles, of course, is the construction tasks. Is the assumption, or just understand the process, when a bid goes out, does it go out to one construction firm, or is it multiple construction firms?
No, it goes out as a public bid, and any bidder who's pre-qualified with the state of New Jersey can bid this project. So, no, it would be going out to a number of bidders who we would solicit. But the reality is that it's open to who's ever qualified through the state to bid on it.
Yeah, what I was thinking, though, is looking at the long poles, is there a constraint there, resource constraint? That's why they're so long, the construction time.
No, actually, they're pretty aggressive. The 12 months to get an addition up is fairly aggressive. We think it can be done. But no, those, to give you an idea, steel, the structure, the framework of the building, that's probably the longest lead item that we have in a construction site. So what I typically use is the day you sign up a contractor for your construction project, expect steel 16 weeks after that award. So that eats up 4 months of your project. Now, you still have to put the foundations in and the underground utilities that service the building, and you'll do that within those 4 months, but you're really constrained by the steel getting there. And then after that, the exterior walls, the roof, the interior, and there's your...
So it's not a resource issue?
Oh, no, not at all. It's not a resource issue. Yes?
I seem to remember, I wasn't on the board, but I seem to remember during the last construction, we actually got hurt by steel prices going up
That's
to
right.
where we actually had to cut back. With all the activity in the news today, what kind of contingencies do we need to plan on with that?
The Department of Education, on the estimate forms that they approve, they require a contingency of 5%. So boards of education are obligated to set aside 5% of their budget. In other words, your bids have to be 5% lower than what your budget is. And we don't expect to have to use that 5%, but that's what the state requires. So if that answers your question about the contingency.
Well, I was wondering more specifically about steel. in the news with tariffs and such, and what that might do to the pricing of steel.
Yeah,
If in your world, people are starting to look ahead.
Yeah, I know our chief estimator, he keeps his finger on the pulse of what's going on in that regard with the way commodities are rising or going up or down, copper, steel, those kinds of things. It's a little bit like playing the stock market, but we think we have a good track record with that. But I do remember that time when the steel did spike, and it actually it hurt some contractors who had low bids, who had no option to go back to a board of education, ask for more money. They just couldn't do it. So a lot of guys got hurt during that time.
And this may be more a question for you, Kellen. As I look at the variation from our initial estimates to where we are today, seems like the biggest change is at Union. And is that related to the moisture?
Part of it is. As you remember, we did a successful moisture mitigation at the library in Union. It involved taking out asbestos-laden underlayment, so that was an expensive demo part. And then we had to go back with the waterproofing, and in fact, the concrete fill that Bill was talking about is actually got a special additive in it, which makes it impervious to the moisture transmission. So there was a double layer that stopped that water from happening. And one other room we tried an alternate that was less expensive, and that one still allowed moisture to come through. So we did identify a methodology to arrest the problem. It's not inexpensive, and so one of the things multiplied times that, because we didn't leave any rooms out, we addressed all the ones where that's a known problem. That went up, but also as we reconciled the estimates between our office and Epic's office, if there was a disparity between the two estimates, we carried the higher estimate. So that's part of that differential.
And with the moisture, so we're talking about 10 rooms in the stage, I think you said, yes?
Right.
And obviously, it doesn't make the moisture go away, it just kind of controls it. Does it chase it someplace else that we have to?
We haven't seen any detrimental impact from the one that we did in that way. We're really not sure what it seems to have this magical moisture source underneath that building. And so the thing that we could do is stop that from migrating up and causing a problem. But the wood floors are particularly susceptible. I've always loved the floors in that building because they looked so good. But it becomes, expanded, and then it becomes kind of what I call Coney Island floor. It just starts going like this because it has no place to go but up. So those are going to have to be taken out and replaced with a more tolerant surface, that can handle that. But we do have to stop it, and we've tried any number of things in the temporary patches and stuff, and the only thing that worked was that procedure that we actually proved out in the library.
Thank you.
I just had two questions. First, piggybacking off of what Sally had said, do you think it might be feasible to use part of the field space at the high school and to keep part of it available, if that were somehow possible?
Yeah. Yes. I
Thinking like
if-
physical
yeah, if
education
you can,
classes, to salvage some of it for some programming.
Sure. I mean, you wouldn't be able to play a soccer game on it, but
We did that the last renovation we had.
I think so.
Was available. It was very limited use, and it was also, there was concerns. I mean, you had construction material out there, and you also had construction going on back here. But we did get a little bit of use of the field for a part of the time. One of the other constraints, obviously, is you can't close down to do the work, so we're always trying to work around the students in the building, and that's why some of these periods are extended too. But the last go-round, we were able, for example, when this cafeteria was getting, this used to be an old kitchen, and it was, it got expanded out from where that joint is over there to here. we had closed down, and we had that part, it was closed off for about a month or two, and we had to find alternative places for kids to go, and we worked around it. So our experience with both, with Epic and Kellen as the architect, we were able to manage. But there will be, there's no doubt about it, during the major construction, there's going to be some constraints.
Thanks. The other question, I'm assuming during July and August, that's when the loud work happens, or as much of that as you could do. You said this is an aggressive timeline, so just thinking about September through June, do you feel like you've given yourself enough of a cushion to be able to really adjust so that the summer work is still the loud work, and do you see it having any sort of impact if you were to fall behind that?
Yeah, well, remember where this is at right now. It's pre-referendum. The drawings, the plan hasn't been 100% developed, but we're pretty confident from our experience that this is a workable, phased schedule. Can I stand here and tell you that it's going to be quiet during September to June? It's not. You know, it's and some of you lived through it from the last referendum, but it's you know, this is what we do. We know what we have to, what the pitfalls are relative to working in an operating school. There's going to be some days where it's going to be, you know, maybe not a good day, but we're going to try and minimize all of them. I'm not going to tell you that it's going to be perfect, because nothing
Jack,
ever is.
that 230 gym where we took apart the walls to replace those defective lintels was started in May, ahead of the summertime schedule, to give us that little bit of edge that we needed to finish that. And when there were testing days, they didn't work. There were
Right.
specific, they worked with us in doing that.
And we'll put that, so remember, there's a low bid, public bid. Contractors live and die by the documents that they bid on, because that's what their financial risk is, if you will. So we're going to include that kind of language. Kellen, that's a great idea, a great thought. That yes, we always indicate when deliveries should come. In other words, we don't want deliveries to come when the kids are arriving and when the kids are leaving, and the testing days. What is it? The park tested.
Well, for now.
Yeah. Well, sorry, bad idea. Sorry to bring it up.
Well, you know, the other thing is, we had weekly, or I think it was weekly, project meetings, and the building principals get invited to those meetings when their building's under siege, and they'll be asked to go over dates that may be days that certain precautions have to be taken or certain activities going on, or they'll be given advance notice that maybe they have to reschedule some things. Believe it or not, I think the last project, the reason why Bill was a little confused with dates, because it started like 2003, ended at various places, and finally in 2006 or 7, I think we were done here in 2004, if I'm not mistaken, or early 5. But during that whole time, we only had 2 days that the high school started 1 year, 2 days late, made those days up. Everybody else, we never had to miss a day. And that, keep in mind, in today's dollars, the project 14, 15 years ago was almost as big in terms of the work done then. So, you know, it's not going to be normal. We're having major, you know, if we go forward, we're having major construction, but it'll be pretty close.
Thanks for your confidence, Jack.
Yeah. It worked once, you know.
Mr. Roller?
Yeah, the 2 new playgrounds and the 1 upgrade, they considerably went up in the estimates. We're at $195,000 early on. Now it's close to $500,000. So wondering what changed. And
We had a review, and Epic was invited to one of those sessions with the civil engineers, and the under drainage was not adequately covered in the initial concept. So it was a miss in the estimate, and it was patched, you know, to correct that deficiency. You may remember that Washington School that site is so flat that the drainage pipes have this, you know, minimum pitch to them, and the existing playground had issues where we had to, you know, fuss over that to get it to operate properly. So the new location is slightly higher up. So we think that we've got a better shot at that. But it's an extensive situation that allows those to, the rubbery material is actually pervious to the water. So within a short period of time after a rain, it's a playable surface because the water goes down through and is managed by the sub-drainage. But we had underestimated initially the amount that was going to take.
So my actual question was, I'm afraid that there might be something else that could significantly increase, doubling for, or more than doubling for an estimate. Is there any other place that we could have a potential problem like that? I hope not.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason that this process was recommended where Epic came on board during these early stages was to give early oversight and get two opinions. And that's what I said when I referred to reconciling the estimates. We talk to each other and say, well, why did you allow this much? Or why did you cover this or that? So getting that expertise from the construction side with our design side gives us the best probability for a successful outcome. So there's always something that a person doesn't see.
I'm an optimist. I'm optimistic.
But we do try to dive down into that, and they know what our schematic drawings are actually going to look like when they're fully developed and detailed based on the experience, and even the experience between me and Epic goes toward that.
Okay, so for Union School, if there was a problem with the water coming back up someplace new, like I'm worried about coverage for something like that, because that's been a big problem at the Union School for over a decade.
We're operating on a fairly extended experience level with where that problem has occurred, and we covered those known areas, and that's most of the wood floors. I mean, that's where the problem is showing up because of the susceptibility of the wood to even minor changes in moisture, make that behave the way it does. It turns out that the underlayments in that building absorb moisture. They're a gypsum-based product, and they decided that they were improving it by putting asbestos in it. So they took something that was problematic in this situation and made it the worst that it could be. But these estimates, just to go to your point, cover that because we had the experience with the building and knew to look for those issues. So I think there's something in the neighborhood of $100,000 just for fixing the gym floor because it has that problem.
Mrs. Jones?
Mr. Rowland took my question on the preschool equipment. Thank you. Well done. The area that is the now proposed kitchen area on the current facility change of the cafeteria,
right.
It appears that this goes into the area where we park our vehicles for the school, trucks, and so forth.
Yeah.
How much of that lot will be taken up?
It takes a portion of it closer to the building, but in addition, because that would be operating as a centralized kitchen, you'd have a van for transporting food to the other satellites would have to be able to get in there on a daily basis to access the loading dock. So there would be some practice change involved as far as what is parked over there today. I don't know what vehicles are parked over there, but...
Maintenance.
Okay. So we would have to look at that, but we are definitely going to have a tighter constraint. We are working out the designs to preserve that field. You'll notice that we didn't go any further than that line of the adjacent building. We're holding things, and forcing that to work. And we do take a piece of that. You're correct in your observation. But we're trying to do as little of that as possible. And we still have detailed design meetings with the kitchen designer to see whether we can push that back.
just one other thing, it has nothing to do with this, but we've been talking about this. The schools reopened with Union School being 4th to 8th grade and Pierpont in September of 2005. So that previous spring and whatever was the wind-up of all the construction, except for maybe a couple of projects here at the high school. But it was mostly 4 and 3 that you did the work.
Actually, we occupied
I'm wrong?
Lincoln and Washington, the first pieces of the project, in 2005.
Right, so September of 2005.
And this occupancy extended a little into 2006 over here, because this followed that. And then Union came after that and finished up around 7, I thought, somewhere in there.
Around what?
Around 2007, the last piece of
But
Union.
the 4th through 8th grade, the school started 4th through 8th grade at Union at that particular time.
We were occupied by the new configuration before Union was finished, is what I remember.
Okay, yeah, in September 2005. That's
Mhm.
okay.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So understand that in none of the buildings now, we can't go up, correct? Right, that's out of the question. Right? Except for,
The-
yeah, save Lincoln for the 2.
Except
okay?
for Lincoln, where it
Right.
was prepped
So-
for that
right,
purpose.
right. So that would mean, so with these additions, will we be maxed out on all our space unless we took over playground or field? This would
There,
be it, right?
there's very little free space remaining, and these 2 large gymnasiums take up the most significant remaining open space. But going up is, if you're in the high school and you are up between the 2 bio labs on the top floor in the middle wing of Elliott, when you walk out to the back and you turn left and you go across to the Mortimer wing, you're crossing through a piece of building that's standing above the 1938 addition. It's literally a building on the 3rd floor that has long legs that go down to new footings in the bottom. So it looks like a table that was placed over the other building, not resting on it, but going through it, because we needed to have that connection on that level. So I never say that something's impossible.
We save spending, rebuilding everything.
Right.
Yeah.
But generally, you can't place new significant loads on existing footings that were not engineered to take that.
So you're talking about as like the building straddles it on those
It-
little legs?
Yeah, the legs go down through the other building without resting on it to its own supports 2 stories down.
Oh, it doesn't go around it, it goes through it.
It goes through it.
So you can't
And all of that was
straddle the
done,
pole.
all of that was done in an occupied high school setting.
I appreciate that you put the different proposals that were considered in terms of the cafeteria renovation here. How many of the constraints that you identified with building a new cafeteria on the outside space would exist if we were instead to build the new science labs on the exterior space here? Again, freeing up the classrooms, but foregoing the cafeteria option. Would that be I'm not saying it would be the best option, I'm just asking, is that an option that would have the same result in terms of taking the field, or would that somehow differ?
Part of the problem is a lack of efficiency. When I look at this area out here, it's an active service court today. 9 exits from this building are concentrated through that area. All of those have to be addressed in the addition. So I lose a significant chunk of space going around next to the existing exterior wall and collecting all of that egress. And so my net space that's available is automatically 10 feet out closer to the field before I can start having the educational inventory space. So whatever I put there is limited in its size, and I couldn't tolerate, what we found was we couldn't tolerate both the kitchen and the cafeteria and the faculty lounge. I'm trying to stuff 10 pounds in the proverbial 5-pound bag, and it didn't fit. So science rooms would be a different study, and to your question, I did not study that, but I saw how little it took before I was treading on live field space.
Yes?
In terms of the new gyms, would they have air conditioning?
We're presently figuring that those are air-conditioned spaces because in the case of Pierpont, that's the assembly space for 650 people. And so what happens in the places like the auditorium at Union, that they become unusable by May 1st in any given year because the latent heat load from all of those people, occupants, is just overpowering, for that space. So I'm a believer in air conditioning. I'm a believer in sprinklering because we get fire area credits for doing that. And that's how the code is written today. It encourages going to that type of construction. So the schools are used and used and used, and that includes areas outside September, to June. And even in that, September, October are conditioning months. Last part of April, May, June are all conditioning months. So it makes a big difference in educational quality to have the space be comfortable for the students. So that's how we're budgeting right now.
Any additional questions?
Are we still talking this or not?
Do you want to, these are the,
The drawings for the facade?
right, but I think those,
What
I
we
don't know if
got?
there was anything additional about the facade renderings, or they're just examples of what was put up?
Right. They all bring it up to a current technology standard energy-wise. We replaced the Nesbitt units with, now this concept was based on 4-pipe fan coil units, which have chilled water going to them and hot and cold, or hot and return, supply and return going to them, so that you do not have the seasonal switchover situation until your chiller can't run for other reasons. But it's designed to give you the maximum control on your learning environment and keeping it within range.
And that's the same for all three?
Yes,
And-
they all permit that.
And more or less, are they all three around the same cost impact?
I think the one retaining some of the brick facade might be a little less expensive. But in general, you're taking off that completely inappropriate building envelope and putting on one that brings it up to a current energy standard and appearance standard.
And the rendering that's behind you is?
This is a rendering concept that was recently, we did a room similar to this in another district for their next generation science standards improvements. And they're going to more flexible space, more open space that can be configured in different ways, and going away from fixed islands and things like that. So it's
something along those lines is what we would envision the labs?
right. These are configured with two 80-inch screens, and the main teaching screen is a touch-sensitive screen. So it replaces the Epson kind of unit here with an image that is much brighter. And by having two of them in the room, one of them is a slave to the other room, the other one, the visibility is a student can choose which screen is more comfortable for them to view from their point, because these are large rooms. So that kind of technology is making a huge difference for the teachers that are being put into those environments. We're getting back really positive feedback about that level of communication effectiveness that they're having. And it's made so that it can project the image from a student's laptop or Chromebook onto that screen, so you can illustrate your work to the class on that kind of a format. And if you see the difference with side-by-side A/B comparison between those LED screens, high-definition screens, and this reflective throw technology, it's day and night.
Okay, perhaps you could turn that so that folks sitting were able to see it. I don't know, again, any other questions from board? Okay, what, so I think we're going to come back here. Okay, so what I'd like to propose, we took a little longer than had anticipated, and the board will have to go to some business activities later, but I would like to open the floor for the public, anyone wishing to make comments. To the extent there's a question that can be answered by either our business administrator or the folks that have presented from the architecture and project management companies, we'll do that. We're going to have to limit times to maybe 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and what we'll do is, because we had 2 presentations, one on the preliminary budget to be submitted to the county, and of course the last one on the facilities plan. We'll open it to whichever topic you might want to make some comments on. The process is we'd ask you to state your name, your address, which topic you're addressing, and then to make your comments, please. But we'd like to capture the names and addresses of those making comments. So we can address you can go to the mic.
Hisham Mahmoud, 259 Orient Way. I missed the total number or the estimated for the project. Last I checked was 49 point something million. I couldn't see it.
Yeah, so the last, the estimate on that we were is 53,014,954.
Okay. And one question, and excuse my ignorance, maybe I wasn't living in town. The Mortimer site, when was it last built or modified?
1958.
1958. So this facade has been there since
60 years. Yes.
60 years, okay. I have actually a few questions to the architecture, if you don't mind.
That's up to...
Well,
okay.
why don't you address the question,
Sure.
and if it can be answered in a
It's actually a
reasonable
few
period of
questions.
time.
One, where are they planning to put the loading dock for the kitchen if the kitchen was to be built on top of the pool? Are they planning on putting the loading dock all the way on the other side? Or is there a chance the loading dock will be here and we may end up actually taking part of the field regardless? That's question number one.
Loading dock for
I
the
think
cafeteria.
I can answer that. If I'm wrong, Kellen, correct me. The loading dock would go in that parking area, that driveway that exists off a home. So where the trucks are parked?
On the other side, okay.
Okay.
All right. Now, 10 years from now, if I brought in the same architecture firm and I told them, hey, we need another 4 or 5 classes, where would they build it? I mean, my point and my intention is obviously clear. They mentioned that for an additional $2.5 million, there might be an alternative. I still believe there are alternatives. And I've made it public here before. I did a check with few architects who said there is nothing impossible to be built. Today I heard the number $2.5 million. $2.5 million may sound a lot, but when we're talking about $53 million project that will cost taxpayer an average $450 a year, If he increased it by $2.5 million, that's another $20, $10. I think if the residents are willing to pay $450, $500, or maybe more a year, they're not gonna really care about $10 extra. That being said, again, my question again, 10 years from now, if I ask the architectural firm, give me another 4, 5, 6 classes, where would you build it? There are other alternatives. I'm not telling them what to do. There are other alternatives by going up. If the Mortimer side is going down, maybe checking with the building zone, it can go up. There is a place at the end of the school, which I documented to the board before, by the other exit of the pool, that he can build a brand new building. There is that space over there that's used by the IT. There is so many choices can be built to save the pool. Again, I'm just making my comment here. I do believe there are other viable options that's not gonna cost billions of dollars. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a small little resident here
Yes?
that she wants to talk.
Yes, please.
Okay, go ahead.
My name is Sophia Tran, and I live in Rutherford, New Jersey, and I don't want you to close down the pool.
Why? Want to tell them why?
No.
No? Okay.
Well, thank you, Sophia.
Thank you. Go ahead, Isabella.
My name is Isabella Bianco, and I live in Rutherford, New Jersey, and we should keep the Rutherford High School pool because that's where the Rutherford Meadowlands swim team swam mostly. And, huh?
You swim almost every day, right?
Yeah.
That's right.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Frank Wilson, 171 Montrose Ave, Rutherford. Couple questions for everybody here. You all asked a lot of questions, but none of you asked what's going to cost each taxpayer for this project. You also keep saying 53 million, but that's before interest on a floating bond. It's going to cost about $82 million after this thing's done over 20 years, which means out of 5,000 households, that's 840 years for the next 20 years, everybody's got to pay. If you don't live in town, if anybody in this board that doesn't live in town, probably a couple of you don't, it affects us for the next 20 years. 2 people here don't live in town. If just to put the gym, for the gym size, that's $410 a year for the next 20 years, based on your interest over 20 years. That's just a jailhouse math, all right? When you do this, all right, first of all, I didn't hear you guys address the maintenance parking lot that's sitting out there. There's a huge maintenance parking lot out there that we can relocate those vehicles down to DPW. It's sitting right at the end of this lot over here. I mean, it's pretty big, but nobody's addressed that spot. Everybody keeps talking about this one. How about the one that's sitting down there? I believe it's next to the pool. Why don't you put a building over there? Nobody addressed that. All right, if you go to a kitchen service, you also add more costs now to janitors, kitchen help, kitchen staff, food that has to be thrown out. You also impact all the businesses in town that are hanging on that serve lunches that aren't going to serve lunches. So guess what? When they leave, there's a hole nobody's going to fill. Well, guess what? Rutherford goes bye-bye again. You know what all happened when the college moved out, what happened to the businesses in town? We start doing that, ones that serve lunch, it's going to be an impact, okay? Big one, I don't know about you, but I can't write off more than $10,000. So everything you're talking about right now, you can't deduct. State and local taxes, you know, there's a cap now. The president initiated a cap, $10,000. So all of this, I don't know too many folks that aren't paying under 10. So this pushes you over. So everything right here is non-deductible. This is strictly money out of your pocket. So instead of going the opposite way when the president said you can't deduct 10,000 or more than that for your state and local taxes, we're going the other way and increasing it $1,000 a year. Guys, gals, you know, did you read the papers? Are you serious? If you need a gym, You can use the YMCA gym for $20 a month, which is $180 a year, versus $410 a year for the residents to pay for a gym. There's 77 houses right now that are in foreclosure in Rutherford. Look it up. That's not pre-foreclosure, that's not for sale. That's strictly foreclosure. There's 77 houses right now that are in foreclosure, and there's a reason why. If you keep stretching this rubber band, sooner or later, it's gonna pop. You can't sit here like only, and you can't say it's 52 million. It's not. What's the interest on this? 3%? What's 3% over 20 years? That's the number you guys should be addressing, not that it's only 53 million. What's the bottom line? You take out a loan, you got to pay it back. Hopefully, everybody that's sitting here understands what I'm coming from. If you live in town, you too pay about $1,000 a year extra for 20 years. You cannot write this off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Ray Tomzak. I live at 46 Walnut Street in Rutherford. First of all, I wanted to thank you all for undertaking this exercise. It's very important to continually strive to accommodate the students and the teachers and bring our facilities up to, you know, what the current standards are. In general, I support the renovation and expansion of the schools. One of the questions I had, which I think was raised before in questioning getting rid of the pool, is if there is enough space at the YMCA to accommodate our program. And I know that's been brought up.
Which
I don't
program?
know.
Are you talking about the high school swim team?
Yeah, so
the high schools, I can't speak for the YMCA. Is there enough space? It is a scheduling thing at the YMCA, but pools accommodate high school swim teams. Very few high schools, I think there's 3 or 2 in northern New Jersey have pools, and all schools have teams, and there are other pools besides the Y. The Y would obviously be the preference if we were to go this road, but there are other pools in the area, but that's how that would be accommodated. The high school swim team would not be in jeopardy if the pool was gone.
Two questions I have is the way you might structure the proposal to go out for a vote. I think you picked option 2, which is to have the cafeteria kind of replace the pool.
We haven't picked any option.
You haven't picked
yet.
any option. Okay. Because what's concerning to me is I would hate to see the entire proposal get voted down because maybe, I don't know if you can give people options, you know, choose this option, that option, you know, you're going to put out there for a vote. If a lot of people want to keep the pool and they come out and they vote and then it doesn't pass, then you've wasted another year and now you got to come back and do it all up. So I would just ask you to, if there's a way to consider like having people vote for different options.
We are looking at every possibility, and we've looked at possibilities about how the ballot gets written too. That's governed by regulations outside of this body, but we are looking at every possibility. Should the referendum go forward and not succeed for any reason, okay, you have the opportunity 5 times in a year. Mr. Kelly, I think it's 5, right? Yes. To hold a referendum. You could go back out if you're ready to, as long as you have 60 days to file with the county elections. You can go out within 60 days. So although the goal of any contest that one enters, right, is not to lose, if you enter this particular contest and you do lose, you can do a data analysis as to why, and you could reshape it and go back out within 2 months, if there's a voting period in that time. So it wouldn't be a year delay.
Okay.
And to your point, as the options we put forward today, I mean, there are some options, none of it is clean, right? There's the field, there's cost, so, there could certainly be pushback against any option. But one of the things the board will be deliberating on, and in short order now, we keep looking like it was far off, but it's getting here shortly, is what's the best option to put forward for the school district.
And I think it's important to, just take a step back to reflect on how we got here. The first phase was to do a gap analysis. At the first level, the most important level is educational programs, what we need, to deliver the educational programs that are envisioned as we move forward. Then the next was to address community needs, and that's where we had a year-long strategic planning committee that involved many people from the community in identifying, what were the areas that the community wanted to see the schools move. And then, as we've seen tonight, we started with some kind of large-scale plans, and we've been adding detail, adding views with project management, getting more and more refined, because to Mr. Rowland's point, we want to make sure that whatever referendum we might propose the community should consider, that it's as accurate as it can be. We don't want to come up with a surprise that then says, oh, we have to cut back on a project because we didn't really forecast the cost correctly. So all of this is going on in parallel, and at the end of it, what we as a board, our goal is to take in all the information that's been given to us, talking with the community, understanding what we think is the right balance of what we'll get out of it. The pain and suffering we'll go through for a few years with it. We know there'll be some of that, and the cost of it, because we know this has a cost, a significant cost associated with it. We'll come up with what we suggest that the referendum should be composed of, and then it's up to the community to tell us that yes, that's a reasonable approach for what we see for our schools, or no, it is not, and go back to the drawing board. But there's been a lot of work going into it, so we want to do as much as we can to get it right the first time, for sure. And the factors you mentioned are in the consideration.
Yeah, and my last 2 points, one of them I've made before, and that is, I don't know if anyone's reached out to the Port Authority. As I've spoken before, Pierpont School is right over the flight path of that Teterboro Airport. Beckton High School got a substantial sum of money from the Port Authority to soundproof their schools, and I forget the number, but it was like, if it cost $20 million, they got $10 million from the Port Authority to do their high school, renovation and expansion. So I'd ask you, I don't know, 6 or 8 months ago, if you could reach out to the Port Authority and see if there was any funds that they could float our way, to help with that renovation. And besides all that, there was another thought that occurred to me. It's just that too bad at Union School, although, that's now the middle school, the 7th and 8th grade, I still feel, or I still wish in my heart that, we had the 6th, 7th, and 8th grade there, and it's too bad that we couldn't take what's going to become, I guess, maybe a gymnasium and turn that into a 6th grade wing, and have, now you could have Pierpont, just be all the 4th and 5th graders, have Union School be 6th, 7th, and 8th. Originally we were told, there wasn't enough space, it cost a lot of money, this is the most efficient, cost-effective thing to do. And now we've come to a point where, we're spending a lot of money, and it seems almost a good percentage of it is on cafeteria space and gymnasium space. So, I don't know. Just a thought.
Well, I don't want to go into a lot of detail, but 4 years ago, Mr. Chapin, 3 years ago, we looked at converting Union School into a 6th, 7th, and 8th, and the amount of classrooms that we would need there, the amount of space we need was not possible to do. I shouldn't say it wasn't possible. It would have been it would have used every foreseeable space, there would have been no room for anything. Whether there was grades 6, 7, and 8, or grades, for that matter, 1, 2, and 3, the gyms at Washington and Lincoln, 1, 2, and 3, are double the size of the gyms in the other schools. It is inadequate, it is substandard. We live in a borough that we're very proud of, and yet we're sending our children to a facility that has substandard areas. Think about that. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Frank Morano, high school principal, 56 Elliott Place. That's what I feel like my address is. I'm here more than I'm home. I know you're not used to seeing me with a piece of paper, but I'm going to try to be nice and brief and stick to my points. The first thing I want to do is thank you all for considering going out to referendum to improve our schools for our students. As a principal, I think the proposed plans are much needed. First and foremost, space is extremely limited in the high school. That's to accommodate students and teachers. If I need to find an available classroom in the building, it's nearly impossible. In fact, we currently have teachers that teach all over the building in 5 different classrooms. By adding 5 classrooms, this will definitely ease the situation. Security will also play a major role. I know that's been a major discussion that we've been having, but if we can limit the number of students leaving for lunch, that will definitely increase our security here. Currently, we have approximately 500 to 550 students leaving in the middle of the day every day. We all agree that arrival and dismissal are the most unsecure times in any building. And with limited space for students to eat, an open lunch is our only solution. Right now, we currently also eat in our choir room, and the custodial staff waits outside, the bell rings, they quick clean the room and get choir in there. God forbid a kid spills something, the choir students are waiting outside. With a larger cafeteria, we will have the option to close lunch for specific grade levels like most schools in Bergen County. Another item that needs immediate attention is the facade on Mortimer Ave. Besides the appearance, we can no longer replace these windows, and the heating units are antiquated. Ask any students in the middle of the winter, most of the classrooms are about 90 to 95 degrees. We've looked at fixing them. Some of them are the original units. We just had a discussion before the meeting about his daughter, who was sitting in Miss Leonard's class when the wind blew, and thank God that nobody was sitting next to the window right above us, and the window just from the wind was smashed in. Nobody touched it. It just popped right out, and we called up Ventura Glass. They came right over and said, we can't replace this. We have to put a little plexiglass in there. Can't even replace windows on the facade anymore. Presently, we make do with our science labs. Our science teachers are amazing, as best we can, but they're not science labs. They're classroom with sinks. It will be awesome to be able to conduct, and we need to be able to conduct more hands-on lab activities and lessons with more state-of-the-art equipment. The field, last thing, probably shouldn't say this, but, I'm heading out to the field once the weather gets a little warmer with a wheelchair, probably once a week. Rolled ankles out there, the field is a disaster. I have to go out myself because Miss DePasquale cannot get the wheelchair through all the bumps. It's like the moon over there. We can't get the wheelchair through there. So we have about 80 students in gym. Once the weather gets nice, we split it up between the weight room, the gym, and the field. It's wonderful. We get the students outside, but we usually are running out there with rolled ankles. So it will be great to have the field updated. I know this is a huge undertaking, and for the board, and I just want to thank you for even considering this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joan Carrion. I'm the principal at Pierpont School, so I guess my home away from home would be 70 East Pierpont Avenue. I'd like to echo Mr. Morano's statements. Thank you to the board and everyone who's put the effort into exploring some options at the school. I hear several times throughout the year the space issue is a big problem at Pierpont. I have 17 homerooms, and 24 homerooms. 17 of those homerooms have 25 students or more, and 16 of them have 26 students or more. It's very crowded. To the credit of the teachers, they do a fantastic job. I've never once gotten a complaint about the quality of the education. It's about the number of students in the classroom, and the teachers do a great job with it. The students are up all the time. They're moving, they're working in groups. it's a puzzle. As they pull their chairs out, they're trying to get through people. If someone's working in a group and they have to leave to go to the nurse, they're squirreling around the classroom. They make it work, but it's definitely not ideal. We keep talking about the gym space. The quote was, our gym at Pierpont is 41% smaller than Lincoln and Washington, but I think the statistic that's more important is my school population is double the size of both Lincoln and Washington. So I have almost half a gym size for double the amount of students, and I think that's quite significant. Our cafeteria definitely needs space. We're talking about needing more space here for the high school. The cafeteria at Pierpont is not quite as big as that, and our students are young. There's no open lunch, so they are all eating in there every single day. So being able to take that stage area out and getting more seating space is absolutely vital. And because we don't have a common area where the whole school can meet, not only do you take away the experience of having the whole school participate in something and building a school community, it's also not efficient. Every time we have an assembly, we have to run it 2 or 3 times in order to fit the students in. And if anyone is curious about the space, I'm going to cautiously do this. Please swing by tomorrow night to see our band concert. I hate to invite more people because we really don't fit in as we are, but if you want to peek through the door, it does give you a sense of just how crowded it is. It's amazing that we have 190 musicians, but when we have parents and grandparents and brothers and sisters who want to come and cheer them on, it is very, very tight. And again, thank you all for all of your consideration.
190 musicians?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty impressive.
Yes, it is.
Bonnie Corcoran, 390 Montrose Avenue. Usually I don't speak. I'm going to talk as a parent of Rutherford High. I have 2 kids here, so this referendum will not affect me, other than paying my taxes. I think it is an amazing plan. I have a background in contracting. My husband is an architect, a project manager, so I was nodding and I get everything that the presenters were talking about. Ladies and gentlemen, I talk as a parent of current students. You are in a room right now where the freshmen and sophomores eat. If they go out, they always come back. My daughter, who is a sophomore, eats here. She gets something from the pantry and stays here. There was a very big bubble coming up that was at Lincoln School that made the kindergarten go to Sylvan. Then they it moved up to Pierpont, and it is at Pierpont right now. So 3 and 4 years from now, you're going to have 400, probably about 420, 440 kids, freshmen, sophomores, in this room. This is where they would eat. Not all of them go out. And when it's cold, they might say, oh, I'm going to go out. I'm going to go out every day. When it's cold, it's inclement weather, they want to do a report, they need to do some homework, they all stay in. So you're going to fit 400 and some odd kids in this one room. Now, where the juniors and seniors eat, that is up in the choir room. I've actually been there when they had band day this past year. We came in to give the band kids lunch, and the band parents got to see how tight the seniors and juniors eating facility is. Not to mention, it is very unfair to Mrs. Blanchard, who is our choir director, to not have her choir room at lunch. If a kid says, oh, select choir, I need to work on a piece, they have to find a room to go work because the choir room is unavailable. We are out of space. This is needed because if we don't make the plans, and it doesn't take building overnight, if those bubbles come up, and we don't do this referendum, and those bubbles come up, and you say, oh, we need the space, let's do it, it doesn't appear magically. A construction takes years, 3, 4. You want it to take less? It's a lot more money. So be careful. I would love to save a pool too. It would be great to have every school to have a pool. But if we are in need of a classroom space versus a pool that the YMCA is pretty much holding hostage because they own it per the lease, and we can't have say on it, that's wasted space, because I've heard the YMCA is saying, no more memberships there, no more hours. We all want you to come to our new facility. So in other words, that pool is not being used unless it's just for the swim team. Where I grew up in Sussex County, I was fortunate enough to have a very big new high school, 69 acres, had everything you ever wanted except a pool. Had land for the pool, didn't have the money to build the pool, but we had the best swim team in the county. You don't need a pool connected to the high school to have a swim team. We have a bowling team. Do you see us having a bowling alley? It's got to be common sense. This board and these architects and the project managers, they are working to try to solve a problem that is coming up in the very near future. So be careful what you wish for, because my kids will be out of here. I will not be affected. But the parents of those 5th and 6th graders, it's going to affect them if you stay the way this stays. Because I've seen these rooms in action. They're tight. I've seen Pierpont in action when my kids were down there, and that's when it was 4th through 8th, and it was tight for the band rooms then. Because my daughter was in band. My son had nothing to do with it. He was a sports guy.
I'm going to have to ask you to wrap it up in
okay,
maybe about
fine.
30 seconds. Thank you.
Sorry, that's about it. I just, be careful what you wish for, ladies and gentlemen, because you really need to look at the big picture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just as a point of clarification, and the term lease usually implies exchange of money. We have no, that's fine. We have an agreement signed, a yearly agreement with the Y, which does spell out everything a lease would spell out. You know, when they can use it, when we have it, and so on, but there's no money exchange. Right? Is there anybody else?
More comments? Thank you. Yes.
I'll just make this short. Thanks again. I've spoken a few times. I appreciate your work on this. I mean, it's a really hard decision. You know, what I'm hearing is there's a lack of space, and we're pushing it down the road,
Just
Yes,
for the
sir.
record,
Oh, I'm sorry,
name,
Mike.
yes.
I apologize. Mike Gemelli, 15 Myrtle Street. Yeah, so it's a lack of space. We're pushing it down the road. A few years from now, you know, what will be the next spot we move into? Is it the field? And we made a field. We spent money on the field. Now we move into the field because we need that space now. There is a big bubble coming up. You know, what are we going to do with it? Will this 5 classrooms take care of that large bubble? And then the bubble after that, because I think, Mr. Hurley, you've talked about, you know, it's a few percent every year, and we're still not at the capacity we need to be.
Right.
So right now, I see this as, you know, choosing one sport over another. To me, that it seems we have a great resource in the pool. We want to keep the pool. We want to get this referendum passed, and, you know, if that pool's in there, you know, the people I've talked to, we have a few hundred votes that would probably go against the referendum. So that's all I have to say. I appreciate your work on this. It's a tough issue, and I don't envy your position. So
thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Last call for comments from the public. Hearing none, we'll close the floor for comments.
Can I make,
yes, please.
just, you know, again, because people are going to be watching, and I want to make sure, you know, the projections, we've talked about space and bubbles and so on and so forth. We really have, we still have a bubble, you know, in this Pierpont that, I guess now is Ms. Carrion still here? I think it's 5th and 6th grade now is where the big bubble is, and part of the bubble is now at Union School, right? That's we like that 3-year bubble, and they're going to be moving up. But when we look at, and Dr. Valechko in the back, you and Mr. Mulcahy's first grades are all at 25, 26, right? So that we would have called that a bubble. And the second grades are at 24 and 25. We would have called that a bubble. I think the term bubble is going out of our vernacular because it's pretty consistent. Now, we have 85 classes in the district that have 25 students or more. So it's not a bubble. And the numbers we're looking at do have a 5-year demographic projection. We've talked about that. it does, the demographic company, the demographer, meets with the planning board, meets with the mayor and council to talk about what projected buildings may be going up in town, so they could do their projection. They're projecting the number of students who may be entering school in preschool and kindergarten who haven't been born yet. Okay, and they're usually extremely accurate. So, but what we can't predict is the unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen 6 years, 7 years, 10 years, 12 years. Enrollments may continue to go up. Enrollments could go down. Rutherford, despite some things that people say, I think the Star Ledger last year had Rutherford in the top 5 communities in terms of real estate property going up and people looking to move into it. And part of the reason why we're getting such an influx of students is they're coming in first grade, second grade, third grade, because they live in other communities and they're saying, hey, the schools and the town and the borough are better there. We are, one of the reasons why we talked about 11 classrooms in Pierpont, 21 classrooms overall in the district, plus the gyms, plus the cafeterias, plus that, is because we are trying to maximize every bit of space we have. And, 15, Bill, 15, Kellen, 16 years, 2002, right? So 16 years ago was the last referendum. And yeah, I mean, we probably thought, hey, we got it all solved. And 16 years later, here we are. What we have to deal with, though, and this is just, I'm not promoting or defending or attacking, we have to deal with what we know and not what we don't know. And what we know is we have students now that we can't really fit adequately. And that is going to increase every year for the next 5 or 6 years. That's what we know. And that's what we have to deal with. That's what we have to, and hopefully in our plan, by maximizing it, we're putting extra classrooms in Pierpont that we'll utilize, but we'll be able to help with maybe growth in Washington and Lincoln if we have to, or the kindergarten center. We could look at things like redistricting. Where's the line for Washington and Lincoln? Maybe moving that a little bit down the road, 5 or 6 years, moves a few students. Looking at years ago, I mean, when we used to have to bus 8th graders up to the, I'm not suggesting we should ever do this again, but we used to bus 8th graders up to the high school for electives because Union School and Pierpont were overcrowded, and the high school was a little low in those days. When I became the principal, the enrollment here was about 610. And now every year we're near 800. We've been there for like the last 7. Mr. Morano's going to say, because now he's principal, more kids are coming here. But it's been like that for the last 7 years or so. So what I'm saying is, we could try to figure out where 10 or 15 years will be. I'm worried about now. I'm worried about the current situation that we're in. And how are we going to get through and be ready for that? And I think this plan pretty much does, and whichever variation of plan gets put forward, is going to maximize what we can do right now. So I just wanted to make that comment. And I do thank everybody who comes out, everybody who's watching. We are going to have a website that we're going to put out. We'll send a Connect 5 message out. We'll put it on the web as well. But we're going to have a direct link from our website to a special facilities website, which we're looking for April 2nd. But if it's not on April 2nd, it'll be sometime that week. It will have pictures, it will have videos, it will have detailed stuff. It'll also have easier, shorter information for people who want to get like some quick hit information. And it'll be up and it'll be constantly added to and updated as we go through this process. Okay? And I also want to remind people that on April 12th, Thursday night at Union School at 7 o'clock, we're going to have a community meeting. Some of the gentlemen from both EPIC and PSA who were here tonight will make a similar presentation that night. I mean, if you saw this one, it's going to be kind of the same with maybe a few other wrinkles. Mr. Kelly and I will be presenting some information. We hope to have a little more information also about projections of costs, because we're working with our financial analysts and we're working with people now to try to come up with how that shapes out in terms of impact on. And again, that's going to be That's not going to be 100% certain because we have to wait to hear back from the state about what debt reduction they give to us, but we'll have some more information on April 12th. And as we do with most of our meetings, we will also record that and get that up on the web, on that new web page. So if you can't make it that night and you want to see it, you'll be able to see it within a day or so on the web. Okay?
Time of that meeting was
7 o'clock.
Yeah, on April 12th. Thank you, and on behalf of the board, I would like to also express, our thanks for hearing the voices that spoke this evening and in past meetings, and those that have reached out to us by email. It is, obviously, as I said, we're members of the community also, right? And the community at large has asked us not to run the schools, but to see that they're run well. And so that's the charge that each of us takes very seriously. Understanding the educational leadership of the district and the directions that they can help us understand we need to go educationally, and hearing from the community to make sure that we're addressing community aspirations and concerns as well is very important. So we do thank you, and look forward to the having more vital information available through the website. Hopefully people will be visiting that quite frequently to find new information as it comes. Any other comments from members of the board, please? Anything? If not, we'll move into the business portion of the meeting. I suspect there may not be a great need to sit and listen to this, so if you're exiting, we just ask you to do it quietly because we're going to try to go on with our meeting. Thank you. So we have only one area for consideration this evening, and that is on the agenda, and that's under finance. I would ask the finance chairman, Mrs. Librero, to take us through that, please.
Sure. Let me just open it up by saying there's just two motions on the finance in the finance portion tonight. One is the budget that Mr. Kelly presented earlier tonight. And two is a motion for district travel that the board shall establish, since the board has established an annual school budget, in the school budget, a maximum expenditure amount that be allotted for travel and expense reimbursements. The motion tonight is to authorize that the business administrator shall track and record those costs to ensure the maximum amount is not exceeded. And the maximum amount in our 2018-19 budget is $50,000. So with regard to number one, which is the budget, I'll ask Mr. Kelly to just highlight the main points in the motion.
Well, you're being asked to approve the budget for the year, obviously, and this is just the approval of submission of the budget to the county office of the Department of Ed for their review and approval, theoretically. Total budget is almost $48 million. You'll see on page 2, $47,914,453. The $45 million in there, that includes the tax levy, that includes the state aid, that includes other sources of revenues. Special revenue funds are generally grants, mostly federal, some of them are state. And the debt service is our principal and interest obligation for the 2018-2019 year. The next paragraph deals with the specific tax levies, general fund and the debt service. Debt services, we talked about the general fund tax levy before. Debt service came down a little. Board refinanced about a year and a half ago. So you're reaping the benefits of that. The automatic adjustment for the increase in healthcare costs of $372,000. We talked about that earlier. And in the last paragraph, it's just a discussion of other sources of funds. In this case, it's the capital reserve funds and what projects they're being used for. I did neglect to put in here the Pierpont School irrigation project, which is $23,000. It's included in that equipment total of $124, but I may just fix that before I do anything with it. So that's that motion. The district travel is, honestly, I don't understand. This is a state regulation that this has to be separately approved by the board at this meeting. not later, once the budget is already approved, but, so it is what it is.
Is that a new requirement?
No, no,
It's
you've
every
seen
year?
this-
I don't recall.
yeah.
Every year.
Okay. Okay, so are you officially,
So I am officially moving items 1 and 2.
is there a second? Second. Seconded by Mr. Mazzone. Any questions or comments regarding the two resolutions? Hearing none, ask the secretary to please poll the board.
Dr. Alati?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Cabrera?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. You scared me there. Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Rowland?
Yes.
Mr. McLean?
Yes,
Motion's carried. Thank you very much.
thank you. Were there any other new or old business that any board member wished to bring up during the meeting?
I have one thing I want to, I asked, Mr. Frazier asked me just to let you know, you remember we had that donation from the Booster Club to buy rings for the football team, and so they're going to get them tomorrow night at 6:30 here in the auditorium. There's going to be a little ceremony, and I just thought I'd let you know. Okay?
Okay, very nice. Thank you for that. So with nothing, I think, that we'll handle in our regular meeting, any legislative updates and that sort of thing. So I would, at 9:40, open the floor once again for any comment from any member of the public wishing to make such a comment. And seeing none, we close for public comment at 9:40 as well. And there is no need for an executive session this evening, so I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
By Mrs. LeBeur and seconded by Mr. Racine. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, we are adjourned.